That was your fault. That was totally not my fault. You, like, to be honest, no. Okay. Oh. This is how you should start all your podcasts.
Take 16.
2. Come on now.
Whether you're a life coach, therapist, biohacker, invested in wellness, or in the healthcare profession, if you have an intention to work in psychedelic spaces, you're in the right place then. If you're called, get involved. But first, get informed. Let's talk the 4 N's: intake, intention, in-space integration, leading to deeper transformations. Psychedelic Coach Podcast, Talk Cole. Walk you through the process, it's all possible. Leave space for the follow through. Most importantly, integration is not optional.
Welcome to the Psychedelic Coach Podcast. What up, y'all? And before we proceed any further, make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you never miss another podcast. Today, we're on the Psychedelic Coach Podcast. I have an amazing, special, fantastic, stupendous, and miraculous giggly guest, Dr. Nikki Siso.
Yeah.
And Dr. Nikki Siso is one of my favorite people in the Austin area. You are a person who connects human beings together and brings people together in some really, really awesome and miraculous ways. I celebrate you so much and in so many ways. You have a group on Telegram, Austin Events, where you tie all the people together in Austin, and it's really, really fantastic to have you here. So I would love, as we get into today's episode, for you to share a little bit about yourself, what you do, and then we can get into talking about psychedelics and psychedelic integration.
Deal. Thank you so much for having me. You are just a blessing of a being, and I've honored you since the moment I met you. You really are a powerful man. You show up safe and grounded. You create a space of masculine safety that I didn't have growing up. And so I really respect and appreciate how you show up. It makes a big difference for everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah. So, I support diabetics. One of the things I love to do is support diabetics with their journey because diabetes is fascinating. It's just as much a mindset, a mental game as it is a physical one. And that is something that a lot of people are not talking about, and they don't realize that it's not just knowing what to eat when and controlling yourself. It's that you can't get it right. And so, because it's a moving target, and it doesn't matter if I do the exact same thing every single day, I'll get different results based on my sleep, my exercise, my stress, how much fat I took the day before, hormones. It's literally a moving target. And I don't even have to eat sometimes and my blood sugars go up. Sometimes I do a workout and my sugars go down. I burn off sugars. Sometimes they skyrocket because my body's releasing sugars to run away. It's an adrenaline response, right? Yes. And so if you can't get it right, no matter what you do, what's the natural response? F it, give me the cookie.
Yeah.
Right?
Surrender.
Yeah. And so that leads to volatile blood sugars, which then leads to a really deep sense of defeated. And no matter what I do, it's not good enough. It triggers childhood wounds, which is actually the blessing of diabetes. And what you come to find out is that that's how it's here to serve. What I've learned is that's how it's become my greatest teacher. And it's in those moments where I'm looking at my blood sugars, I get 10 readings a day. As often as I look at my phone, it's giving me a reading, telling me how well I've done with my willpower. And it's often high because a cucumber raises my blood sugars. Everything raises your blood sugars. It's mind-blowing. And it takes a very... The degree of variation in your insulin doses is micro. Like if I'm 1 unit too many, I'm dropping low and I'm sitting in front of the fridge searching for sugar, sweating. right? So it's very detailed, and to get it in that perfect range between 90 and 120 blood sugars, very challenging. And I would venture to say impossible to get right at all times. So it's this daily test in a way.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing, what you're bringing to people and some of your experience about it. Now, diabetes, now I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse for 31 years. I know what diabetes is and how, and how it moves. I would love to hear from you, right? Dr. Nikki Siso, the person who has explored diabetes from the medical standpoint and from your own personal circumstances. There are people who don't know what diabetes is.
Right.
And they're type 1, type 2, right? Diabetes. And now they're saying type 3 diabetes. They're saying all these different things that are happening. What is diabetes?
Yeah. So diabetes depends on the type. So type 1 is your immune system. My immune system has attacked my beta pancreas cells that produce insulin. So I no longer produce insulin, which is the hormone that directs sugar into the cell. So sugars just stay in my bloodstream, which if you think of like Aunt Jemima syrup, remember how it was really thick?
Yeah.
It causes all sorts of issues for all the rest of your organs, especially your heart. Like when my sugars are high, my heart hurts. Like it's trying to pump thicker liquid. Type 2 is usually a matter of lifestyle, which is a great news because that means you can easily change it. You can make dietary shifts and lifestyle shifts that will reverse the condition. What I want to make a point here is that it doesn't matter that it's diabetes, it could be cancer, it could be any kind of health condition. I want people and your listeners to hear that if there's any health condition, it's your body talking to you, and it's actually an opportunity for spiritual growth. And yes, maybe you need to make some lifestyle or dietary changes, but often we know what healthy is. Everyone knows fruits and vegetables and salads are healthy. But when you're triggered, are you going to eat a salad? Or are you going to turn to ice cream or alcohol that skyrocket your blood sugars, right? We turn to comfort foods or numbing agents to deal with the emotional, often ancestral trauma that's lingering in our bodies. And so if there is a health condition, it's an opportunity for you to really check in and don't just try and address the symptoms. So it's diabetes. Oh, I have cancer. No,
Yeah.
go a few steps deeper. You're like, why? How is this showing up to serve me?
Yeah. And so thank you for that. And so this brings in the situation around psychedelics. And psychedelics have been an amazing tool for me to let go of my old mindset and let go of all the old family and generational things that I've been really, really deeply embedded into, so that I can show people moving forward, so that I can show my daughter and my grandkids moving forward how to not be a slave to those old dynamics and those old constructs that have caused a lot of the dis-ease in my family, like a lot of the illnesses, And so what is your experience around exploring psychedelics, how it relates to diabetes for you, and what, how this could serve other people?
Yeah. So one of the energetic causes that I've researched that causes type 1, specifically diabetes, is having a missing father. And
tell me more about that.
Yeah. And so I read this and I was like, that's interesting, because my mom left my dad at 2 years old, and then left my stepfather, who I then fell in love with, left him at 6 years old. From 3 to 6, I loved this man. He was my rock. He was my stability, while my mom was this wild child, explosive in some ways, but very loving, but just unpredictable. And he created this like foundation and rock for me. And she left him, and she took me with her, obviously. And I felt a deep sense of loss. Interesting. I developed asthma right after, which is the lungs are an indication of grief. And she didn't know how to help me process grief at that time. She thought I would just overcome. I would just get past it.
Right.
She didn't realize the effects of leaving that man on me. And back to the diabetes, it turns out that while I was sitting in a journey with you, actually, I found myself, if I may share, I was lying in a cuddle puddle. As one does sometimes.
As one does in psychedelic experiences.
Not sexual at all. I was somehow was in the middle of three large, strong men, kind of just draped over each other. And it hit me so strong that was the first time I felt completely safe in the presence of the masculine. And I realized in that moment that that's what I was missing my whole life by not having a father. That the healthy father provides a sense of safety that my nervous system just learned how to not need, or not even, if something's missing, you don't realize it's missing.
Yeah.
If you never had it almost.
Yeah.
And it was this really intense moment. You were there. I was weeping. It just all of a sudden just flowed out of me that I had been missing this deep sense of safety in my life. And my whole nervous system calmed down. There was this really fascinating study that showed they put two groups of mice, poor little mice. One set, they'd shock them every single day at the same time for the same duration. And they measured the cortisol levels. They'd go up and then they'd go down. And soon enough, the mice got used to the shock. They knew when it was coming. They knew how long it would last. The cortisol levels didn't go up as much, and they went down really quickly right after. The other group, they shocked them at different times for different durations. And what they found is that the cortisol levels stayed high, elevated throughout the day, because they didn't know when it was coming. They didn't know how long it was going to last. Well, that was my experience with my mother. My mother was the 8th child out of a Holocaust survivor. She didn't get her needs met. She learned to get her needs met by becoming a bully and becoming a narcissist. The foundation of narcissism is someone who didn't get their needs met. So they learned how to satisfy their own needs, put their own needs first. It's a healthy coping mechanism until it gets unhealthy.
Yeah.
Right? And so as a child with only child, no father around, I absorbed all of that from my mom. I didn't know when there was going to be an explosion. I didn't know when she was going to get mad at the clerk or anyone throughout the day, or me, or herself, right? And so I developed a high level of cortisol, which is actually tied also to diabetes. Adverse childhood experiences has been linked to type 1 diabetes.
Yeah.
So long story short is how the psychedelics play a role is that I get to see all these things with much more clarity.
Great.
There's something about psychedelics that dives you deep into your subconscious, and you get to see what are the tapes that are playing? What are the beliefs? And they show you the first instance, the experience you had as a child. And that deep, you get to feel that sense of unsafety that I felt as a child, and how that led to higher levels of cortisol, right? And then you get to resolve it. You really get to see it and reframe it. I mean, my mother was doing the best she could.
Yeah.
And she loved me deeply. She couldn't have loved me more. She was just a wounded soul. And then when you make that reframe, then it's like a domino effect. All the other pieces of evidence that your brain gathers over the years to say, I'm somehow not good enough, or no matter what I do is not good enough.
Yeah.
Crumbles. It's not true. The foundation of that belief crumbles.
Wow. Thank you for the share. Thank you for being open enough to share about your experience with your mom, your experience with, not having a father. And that's new information for me. Around the diabetes being linked to the missing father. And now that I look back in my nursing career, and when you said that, I just the Rolodex came out. I just started scanning through all of my friends that have had type 1 diabetes and stuff. And the ones that I could recall situations, they didn't have many of them didn't have a father present. I can't tell you about the people that were at the hospital, but I can tell you about my friends. And most of them, father not present physically there, or working all the time, just not in their lives. So that's fascinating. And the cortisol thing is definitely something that that's something that I've studied. The sustained cortisol space. Hormones are supposed to be, they're designed to be in our bodies for particular functions. And then when they're not in function, they stay in the glands that produce them, right? That's just how they're designed. And so when they're moving through the entire body all the time, they can be wreaking havoc on things. You know, and so it's yeah, thank you for the frame, because that's something that I haven't brought on, you know, talking about sustained cortisol levels. And it's something that I'll probably do more podcasting and talking about that in regards to if people are having elevated cortisol levels, if people are having adrenal fatigue and all of these different things that are happening, the sustained stress causes, it's a resiliency space where you consistent, like the mice, right? The mice were being zapped at different times, so the body doesn't know when to do it, so it's always on alert. And so this is where we have hypervigilance, and hypervigilance is a space where we have constant cortisol, constant adrenaline running through the bloodstream, and other hormones as well, and they're wreaking havoc on everything else. They're not supposed to be in the bloodstream for that period of time, for that extended period of time. So thank you for that. Yeah, and thank you for the explorations around it. And so what would you say to people who are in a space with diabetes? They've tried all the exercise programs, they've done all the nutrition, they've seen the specialists, they've gone to doctors. What would you say to somebody who's in a space where it's just like, I want this to stop, I want this to go away, you know, I feel like I'm broken, you know, shame is the undercurrent of it, something is wrong with me, something is broken about me, something needs to be fixed and remedied? What would you say to them as far as leaning into psychedelic experiences and their mind frame in that space?
Yeah, big one. So I'm working with a client right now, and I helped him see, because it's very easy to describe diabetes as a daily battle. And he uses that, I use that word, he was using that word. It's a battle. Feels like every day you're like going up to like war, essentially, with your own body and your desires. Like I'm craving food all day long that I can't have. It feels like a battle. And especially when your blood sugars are high and you're hungry and you can't eat, you're supposed to wait, you don't wait, and then you feel defeated that you didn't have the willpower. I mean, it's this constant every day. You wake up the next day and you're like, oh my God, I woke up high. I didn't eat all night. I haven't eaten in 16 hours. Why are my blood sugars are high? Like, it's this constant daily challenge. And what I supported my client in seeing and shifting that one word from battle to training. I'm in training. And if I can see the feedback, if I can see the blood sugar readings on my phone as feedback and not assign the meaning to it that I'm not good enough, no matter what I do is not good enough, I can't get this right, I feel defeated, this is never ending, right? All that is what creates the suffering. The number on my phone is just a number. But it's the meaning I assign to it that creates the suffering. And if you can actually switch your mindset and see diabetes as a training grounds, so that you actually get to practice using discipline. Because discipline itself is the reward. And that sounds interesting. Because when you're disciplined, there's power in discipline. And the moment you're able to say with discernment, that's not healthy for me, that's not in alignment, that's not actually what my body needs, and I'm going to honor that, and you don't choose to eat something that you're desiring, Henry agrees, then there's an elevation in your power. And then you can apply that to other areas of your life. Where else can you have a little bit more discernment and not just impulsively go for your desires? And by having a little bit of restriction, create a more empowered state in your body and your mindset. It's that delayed gratification concept.
Yeah.
That they did the studies as well, that were the kids that didn't eat the marshmallow, right? They'd give them two, right? The delayed gratification. And, why are they giving kids marshmallow? Anyway, another topic. So yeah, if you can switch your mindset and see diabetes as a teacher and your training grounds. My girlfriend made a funny joke. She goes, we don't have kids, that's why we have health issues. Something's got to challenge us. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we're here
it-
for. Life is challenging for a reason.
there are a myriad of challenges. I mean, I'm in the current belief structure that, each person's path is their path,
Mm-hmm.
and they have their own specific challenges to the individual. And when we look to have the challenges or the eases of other people, we deny ourselves from seeing the actual challenge that we're designed around, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that we're building ourselves around. And so we get into this. I know I have gotten into this space in the past of, I wish I was like that. I wish I had it that easy, and not acknowledging this person's challenges or the difficulties or whatever their path is, and also not acknowledging my path.
Yeah.
And not leaning into what my path is, because I want my path to look like something else. And so the attachment to outcome, the attachment to someone else's lifestyle, the attachment to what looks good, right, or what something should be, is the biggest part of suffering. That's a big Buddhist thing, right? People, suffering is an option, and we lean into the suffering space. And suffering is always an attachment space. There's an attachment to an outcome. And when the thing that I've witnessed with a lot of the people that I've worked with in psychedelic spaces that have had diabetes is there's a despair that is attached. It's like, I'm never going to be free from this. I'm always going to have, and this is my issue with medical diagnoses, is people get locked into that and they start to own it and they format their bodies around it. And so when you get into a space of despair, just like that hypervigilant space when you're constantly looking for the shock, right? The rats or mice are looking for the shock all the time, all day long. If you're in despair, you're looking for the sadness all day long. And there are hormones that are associated with despair. And those are not designed to be in your body all day long.
Right.
How many people do you know, Nikki, that are in despair all the time?
Yeah.
They're in despair, they're in sadness, and then we call it depression because they're recycling sadness, they're recycling despair, and we call that depression, and then we medicate it, which puts a different set of chemicals in the body that aren't designed to be there.
Right.
And what are we doing to ourselves, And I've found that when people that have had diabetes have had these psychedelic explorations, they're actually able to change how they view diabetes, right? They change it from the traditional medical diagnosis to, this is how my body is functioning, and what can I do about this? How can I be how can I be an ally with my body? How can I be integrated with my body, in contrast to fighting with it in a battle space? So yeah, I really appreciate the frames that you're bringing.
Yeah, thank you. 2 points. Remind me to go back to the should be. But first, you just remind me of an experience I had again in a session with you, where I realized that I've been on this journey very much by myself. I don't share with anyone what I go through every day. Nobody knows, not even my mother. Nobody knows. None of my friends realize when I take insulin, I take it under the table. Nobody even realizes I'm taking it. I take shots 6 to 8 times a day. Nobody sees it. And I'm social. I'm social.
Yeah.
Nobody's really ever seen me take a shot of insulin. And I don't share the daily battles. And so it hit me really strong that I'm alone on this journey. And this is painful that I go through this by myself. And it gave me this moment to actually it was almost like a pity party, which sounds funny, but it was incredibly healing to just cry out. And Magdalena actually helped me verbalize it. She's like, what does that sound like? She could see I was just holding in all this pain. And she's like, make a sound. What does that sound like? And all of a sudden I just let it out. And for your facilitators out there, have your people make a sound. If you see their their bodies convulsing or they're holding on, for me, I was like I was straining. And she's like, what does that sound like? She whispered it in my ear. And it gave me permission to let it out. And I bawled over the thought of, this has been such a hard journey and I've done it all by myself. And it was a release. It was a big release. And since that moment, I don't hide when I take the shots. I do it right above the table. I show people, I answer questions, I get on podcasts, I share about my journey. I'm being so much more open with it. And now I'm able to support so many. because of it. So yeah, the psychedelics really supported me in not shaming it, which was a point you made earlier. It's not shameful that our bodies are talking to us in the way that they're talking to us. There are opportunities, again, to do some deep work, deep exploration of what our soul needs to heal in this lifetime.
So awesome. I mean, that's, that shame component takes it back to the should be.
Yes.
That you said you wanted to,
Thank you.
to bring it to. Yeah, sure.
So I'm reading this book, 10x is easier than 2x. If you're an entrepreneur, get your hands on this book. It's brilliant. And one of the points it makes is that Dan Sullivan talks about there's the gap and the gain. And we spend most of our time in the gap. And what that means is that we judge where we are today based on where we should be. And what that creates is a level of anxiety and discontent and like self-bashing, essentially. And instead, his point is that we could instead look at the gain. How much have we gained in the past year or decade? Not where should we be right now, but look at all the gains. And he compares this, he gives one great example of how the kids come to the table, the dining room table, and the mom puts down this buffet of food, and the kids are like, and they get all upset because it's not what they thought it was going to be. And they missed out on this entire joyous opportunity of how much the mother slaved to make this beautiful meal for them. And it was this gorgeous buffet of food, but they didn't see it because it wasn't what it should be.
Mm-hmm.
And we do that throughout our lives. We judge ourselves based on where we think we should be by the time we're 40 or 50, or right?
Yeah.
Instead of looking back, and he shares that we get to look back and see it every single turning point and every single, when you kind of have this growth, this expansion of your awareness, that's growth, that's gain. And you're a different person because of that elevation. So recognize and honor that and look at all the gains you've made over your whole life.
Yes. That's awesome. I got to get that book.
Yeah,
So
it's a must.
not 10x instead of 2x? What is it?
10x is easier than 2x.
10x is easier than 2x. We have to put that in the show notes too. This is what you're speaking about. For me, is the essence of gratitude, right? And gratitude is a huge practice for me. And, it's not just about writing I'm grateful for and saying thank you. It's about observing in appreciation, right? For me, gratitude is an observation in appreciation. And I appreciate everything. And so I remove all the stuff that's happened to me in the past. I remove the judgment of good or bad, right or wrong, how something should or shouldn't have been, how something should or shouldn't be in the future or right now. And I just observe it for what it is. And I'm grateful for it, knowing that it's taking me to someplace else. Now, when I look back at all the things that have transpired in my life, I'm grateful for all of it. Now, there's lots of shit that I didn't like.
Yep.
And there's lots of shit happening now that I don't like. And I'm still grateful for it. I'm observing it. I'm being appreciative of I'm appreciating it for what it is. And I'm looking at it. Is this what I want things to look like? How do I influence this into something different? Right? And I learn from it. I'm not sure if you knew about this, Nikki. I was told that I'd be blind by the time I was 40.
Wow.
I was diagnosed with something called retinitis pigmentosa. And I was told that I was having macular degeneration and that I was going to be blind by the time I was 40. And I spent a great amount of my life in utter terror that I wasn't going to be able to see by the time I was 40. I'm in my 52nd revolution, right? I'll be 52 this December coming, right? And my eyesight's better than it's been in as long as I can remember. I don't wear glasses anymore. I let go of the story. And this is part of my journey with psychedelics, is letting go of the story and being grateful for all of the things. Last night I was at a men's group. Amazing. I'm in an amazing group with about 15 amazing, very eclectic mix of dudes, right? Like guys. And, one guy came to me. We were bringing somebody new into the group because, you kind of have, we determine if somebody wants to stay or not. And they say if they want to stay. And we kind of have an induction ceremony. And a guy came over to me and he said, man, whenever I'm with you, whenever I'm talking to you, you're so present in the moment, what's going on. It's like there's nothing else around. And, and he said, I'm so grateful for your presence in that space. And in that moment, right, everything around my eyesight came into play. And I said, do you know, did I ever tell you about my eyesight? And I told him just what I told you. And he was like, I had no idea. And I said, but this is the gift of me being able to tune out, like, cause whatever is going on with my eyes, my periphery is limited. And so me being able to focus on one person and make that person the object of my full experience, my full attention, and making that person the most important person in my life, because I may never see again. I'm going to be blind by the time I'm 40, right?
Wow.
And so I learned to focus and hone in on each person and study their facial expression, study their body movements, how they're breathing, everything about that person, and fall in love with each person that was in front of me. And so through that diagnosis and all of the things that happened that I hate, I loathed it. Okay. I learned to be able to really hone in on each individual person and love on them like no other person in the world matters, because until there's somebody else in front of me, nobody else matters. I have no idea if this is going to be the last person I ever see. And so that ability to hone in and focus has been a gift for me and anybody that I speak with. The presence that I have is that gift. And so this is the thing, just like we're talking about with the reframing around diabetes and diagnoses and all of these things. These are not death sentences unless we see them as death sentences. And being in the psychedelic space, we can remove these things from that context and put a new context in it we choose. And this is a sovereign space. This is a sovereign authority space that we can lean into. And I really love the way you've been rocking it with the diabetes situation. I'm so in awe of your courage. I'm in awe of your bravery. You have an event called Baby Einsteins that I would love for you to talk about for a moment, where I actually won one time, right? And you're moving into a space where public speaking was a challenge for you, and that's kind of an event that you put together to encourage people to do public speaking and to actually support yourself and reformat your nervous system around it. And this is one of the things when we talk about psychedelic integration. It's the before, the during, and the after of the psychedelic experience. Mm-hmm. And so after that, the psychedelic experience is where you started to reformat yourself and you start to move into all these different challenge spaces. This is not something you need psychedelics for. This is stuff that you can start to really open yourself up into different lanes and lean into that. So tell us about Baby Einstein.
So funny. I haven't led a Baby Einsteins in a while, but they were designed really because I knew that I would need to stand at some point if I wanted to make a big impact, I needed to be able to be comfortable on stage. Mm-hmm. And I needed to learn how to lead a group. And I needed practice because nothing just happens usually the first round.
Right.
Sometimes you suck the first time.
Right. Most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just wanted to be comfortable. I wanted to be up on stage and comfortable to just talk and express myself without having like wah, wah, wah going on in my head and my heart pounding and all that.
I know about that oh so well.
Yeah, and it was founded because I went to this really cool event on an island in Croatia, Baby Bathwater Institute. They're a really cool group of founders. 180 of us were on this private island off the coast of Croatia. And they had daily lectures, and on the last day they had this thing called Baby Einsteins, where anyone in the audience could jump up and share 3 minutes of wisdom. And it was this cool firing of all these cool ideas. And I'm like, this is brilliant. I got to bring this back to Austin. And I finally mustered up the courage to do it. And it was a blast. We had a great time and people really appreciated like leaning into the fear. And I created a really safe space to do so. And I invite everyone listening, whatever your fears are, really lean into them because they don't have to be your fears. They actually go away when you practice. And they're your opportunities often to make a bigger difference. If there's anything stopping you from making a big difference, lean into it and start small. You can start at Toastmasters. You don't have to form a group right away, but start taking the classes or whatever you got to do to practice to start getting better in that area. But that your integration point is an important one, especially for diabetics, but anyone in general. We need reminders. life happens after you come out. You're kind of blown away by psychedelics, right? And for a few days after you're floating, and then life happens and you forget. And so having an integration coach remind you of the lessons you've learned and how you can apply them is really supportive. Is really it's otherwise it fades.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. And, you know, for all the integration coaches who are listening to this podcast, the people who have been in the Condor approach and who come to the Condor approach, I think this is a tremendous space of importance, because as a nurse, being in a hospital, we would send people home. Yeah, go to the clinic, follow up with your private doctor, and that was it, right? And we had no idea. And there was somebody that was supposed to follow up with people that didn't really follow up with people, or they were so overloaded that they couldn't follow up with people. People weren't integrating their processes. They weren't integrating what was going on with their bodies. And this is, diabetes is something that you have to integrate. And you're going to integrate it one way or the other. Integration is not optional. How you integrate it is an option. And so being able to track yourself, right? I used to have charts for all my people that I worked with when I was personal training for diabetics, right? Your blood sugar, how you feeling, and all of this stuff. And it was a tracking situation. Most people who are diabetics, who have some sort of even flux space with their diabetes, they're always documenting. They have apps, like you have, right? And they're always on this space. But the thing that that I've watched people have challenges are you tracking your gratitude?
Mm-hmm.
Are you tracking, right? Are you tracking your sovereignty? Are you tracking your space of, your ease? Are you in ease or dis-ease? And this is part of what the Condor approach is really, really awesome about. That book that we have, that Cole designed around all of her challenges, was really awesome for having the tracking in that space around your sovereignty, around the things that are going on. What is your intention? Are you intentional with what's going on with you? Are you intentional with your food? Are you intentional with how you breathe? All of these things in 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes in the evening. And so I invite you, if you're in a space with psychedelics, with diabetes, to really make sure that you track all of these things and you can start to have a lot of really amazing revelations around this stuff by tracking it. So
yeah, and having an integration coach watching keeps you on track.
Yeah.
Because I know with my clients, they know I'm checking the Fitness Pal. So I know what they're eating.
Right.
And when they fall off, they know they're going to get a text from me, and they get right back on quickly. And, there's forgiveness. There's parties, there's things that happen that, you can have, they call it a cheat day. And I try and not use that word because it's an indulgence day. You're allowed sometimes. And then you get back on track, and there's not this self-bashing that happens. So a coach really keeps you in a line and make sure that self-bashing, because self-bashing leads to more sabotage.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Wonderful. I'm so grateful that you joined me here today on the Psychedelic Coach Podcast. This is something that is very near and dear to my heart. So when you were like, yeah, I want to come on your podcast, I'm like, yes, please come talk about diabetes, and let's talk about integration, and let's talk about your experience. And thank you for speaking about your speaking. You had, I know I've said this to you before, you have one of the most amazing speaking voices that I know of. And, you being on stage with your voice is an important space for a lot of people, to be able to be heard and seen and understood and loved on and not judged, and fully accepted. Is tremendously. Yeah, thank you. It's tremendously important.
Thank you. I actually created recently a series called Wake Up with Nikki's. And the first one's on confidence. I will have one done on health, and that will support people throughout their day and staying committed to their health goals. But basically you get a voice memo from me first thing in the morning, connecting you to your higher self and how you want to show up that day. And then I give some really cool, effective tools at keeping you focused on your vision and who you need to be, and any thoughts that are going to pull you away from that, not allowing them to, and pulling them back, keeping you aligned again with your vision. They're really potent. So wakeupwithnikki.com if you're interested in those.
Yeah, wakeupwithnikki.com. And how do you spell Nikki?
Nikki.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that everybody knows. Okay, Wake Up with Nikki. Yeah. And we'll put that in the show notes as well.
Cool.
What else do you have cooking right now?
Right now, I'm working on a referral network in Austin. So if you're Austin based and you have a cool offering, and I'd love to hear from you. So that will put in the link there in the show notes. You can add what your offering is and who your ideal client, and I'll do my best job to connect you and make some connections, referrals, or joint ventures, things like that.
Yeah. And is this part of your mastermind?
No, the mastermind is a select group out of that referral network that will come together once a month and be a referral network for ourselves within that group. And then I'll have a series of business coaches. I've got 2 growth strategists, potentially Rod Hairston, who is the second in command to Tony Robbins, will come in. It will hopefully be held on his property. And an accountant, a marketing person. I've got a few different business coaches. So there'll be business coaching along with a really strong foundation of referrals.
So this is a step up your game and go deep type of situation. Yeah. This is something for people, for the coaches who are listening right now, who got their game on and who are ready to kind of up level things and move into a space where you're connected with some heavy hitters and some people who are deep diving and creating a network around it so you don't fall off, so you can actually integrate your business. That's an important thing. And you know, Cole does a lot of teaching around integrating business structures and strategies. So wonderful.
Nice.
So yeah, thank you. And where can people find you on social media?
At Dr. Nikki Siso. So DrNikkisiso.
And that's on Instagram.
That's on Instagram.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any place else we can find you? Oh, tell us about your podcast.
Oh my goodness, my favorite. This is my heart and soul. It's called Legends. I interview incredible humans on their journey to greatness. And it's across the board. I've had from shamans to AI experts, just how do we use all of the magic that's available to us to step into our greatness? It's really potent. It's a fun one.
Yeah, it's definitely a fun podcast. I'm on a podcast episode with the amazing Dr. Nikki Siso, and yeah, I'm super stoked. Thank you for joining me today. This has been wonderful. It's been enlightening. I have some more studying to do and a book to read, and I'm looking forward to my messages in the morning from you.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's so exciting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any last words that you'd like to share with the people? Anything that you'd like to offer to the people that some words of wisdom that they can take with them?
Yeah. I think we all need to remind ourselves to be kind to ourselves. All of us. Remind your clients, remind yourself. Take a deep breath and be kind. Be gentle. This is a journey we're all on. We're all in training. I like to say we're gods in training. So if you make mistakes, forgive yourself and learn and move forward, but be kind.
Thank you, Dr. Nikki. I appreciate you. It's beautiful. You know, for me, kindness and being nice are not the same thing. And I'm a fan of kindness and gratitude. So thanks, y'all, for listening. Thank you, Dr. Nikki, for joining me today on the Psychedelic Coach Podcast. Please, if you find this helpful, and I know you do, please rate, review, subscribe to this podcast, and share it with a friend. Okay, when you do these things, the algorithms favor us, and we get in front of more people, and we want more people to be able to have this information. So thank you so much for rating, reviewing, subscribing, sharing with a friend. And remember, I love you in ways that words just don't describe. I hope you have an amazing day. Be easy, be free, and don't forget,
integration is not optional.